My wife has been secretly talking to her ex for over 7 years, hides her social media behind face locks, deletes messages, and lies so easily it scares me. I've got screenshots, gut instincts, and a marriage that feels like a ticking bomb, but I'm terrified to confront her because if I'm right, I'll lose everything. 2 years ago, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see, or maybe I was meant to. My wife, 37, and I, 34, have been together for over a decade. We have a child, a mortgage, a stable life, all the ordinary hallmarks of what looks like a successful marriage from the outside. But inside, something small started to rot the moment I saw that open browser tab. We were sitting together on the couch, and she was showing me something on her phone, a meme, a recipe. I don't even remember now. What I do remember is that she zoomed out of the page, and for a split second, I saw another tab open in her browser. A Pornhub page. It wasn't just a blank logo or an accidental click, it was a video page. I laughed at first, trying to make light of it. I wasn't angry. I'm not someone who thinks watching porn is inherently wrong. I even joked. What's that? You watching something interesting without me? But she froze. Her face went pale, and she yanked the phone back like I'd caught her doing something unforgivable. Then she said, "Oh, that? I heard this rumor that Ms. Rachel, the kids YouTuber, did a porn video once. I wanted to see if it was true." I laughed again, but inside something twisted. It was such a strange, specific excuse. I wanted to believe her, and maybe a small part of me did. But it lingered. That unease. That feeling that I'd been lied to. So I did something I'm not proud of. I waited until she left her phone on the counter one night, face down, and I looked. I didn't want to, but curiosity had turned into something sharper, suspicion. And the second I unlocked it, I knew I wasn't wrong. There they were, search histories, video titles, timestamps. It wasn't just a one-time curiosity. She was watching porn a few times a month, sometimes more. Nothing extreme, nothing bizarre. Just normal stuff. But what gutted me wasn't the porn itself. It was the fact that, early in our relationship, she told me explicitly that watching porn was cheating. Her exact words, "If you have to watch that stuff, you don't need me." I remember that conversation clearly. We were still in that phase where you lay all your boundaries out on the table. And, because I respected her, I stopped watching porn entirely. I didn't want to do anything that made her feel disrespected or insecure. I told myself it was a small sacrifice for the relationship. But now here I was, staring at her history, realizing she hadn't held herself to the same standard. And what made it worse was the lie. She could have just told me she'd changed her mind. She could have said, "Hey, I realized it's not that big of a deal." But she didn't. She hid it. She lied. To my face. It took me a few days to figure out what to do. I hated that I had violated her privacy, but I hated more that she'd broken my trust first. So one night, after our kid went to bed, I sat her down. I told her I wanted to talk about something important, and I gave her every chance to tell me the truth. I said, "I don't believe your Ms. Rachel story. I think there's something you're not telling me. If you want to come clean, now's the time." She didn't. She doubled down. Smiled even. Said, "You're being paranoid. You really think I'd lie about something like that?" And I felt sick. Because I knew she was lying. I had proof in my pocket, on her own phone, but I couldn't even bring myself to pull it out. Instead, I just stared at her and realized this wasn't about porn anymore. This was about trust. About hypocrisy. About the small fractures that start in a marriage and slowly spread until one day, everything's cracked and you can't remember when it began. We went back and forth for about 20 minutes that night, me circling around the truth, trying to give her a chance to come clean, and her dodging, deflecting, pretending not to understand what I meant. I didn't want to trap her. I wanted honesty. But when it was clear she wasn't going to give it willingly, I finally told her what I'd seen. The change in her face was immediate. She froze, then started crying. Not out of shock that I'd invaded her privacy, but because she was caught. She blamed it on her past, on trauma, on something inside her she couldn't control. She said she'd been watching porn since she was a little girl, younger than anyone should have been exposed to it, and that it had become some kind of twisted comfort. I remember feeling the anger drain out of me. I didn't want to make her feel worse about something that might have been tied to deeper pain. So I told her I understood, that I wasn't judging her for it. I even said that I didn't consider it cheating, that to me, it was just a private outlet, a desire, nothing more. She told me she wanted to stop. She swore up and down that she would. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to. Even now, I have no idea if she ever did. Every time I'd ask, she'd say she hadn't watched anything since that night, that she didn't even think about it anymore. But after catching her lie once, it was like something broke in my brain. I could never fully believe her again. Fast forward about a year. We were sitting on the couch again, this time with our kid running around, chaos everywhere, just another normal evening. She was showing me something her dad had sent her on Facebook Messenger. She backed out of the chat, and for a split second, I saw another conversation, a name I didn't expect. It was her ex. Her longtime ex, the one from over a decade ago. The one she once told me was ancient history. My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything, not then. I didn't ask questions, didn't make a scene, because I already knew how it would go. She'd lie, I'd press, she'd cry, I'd forgive, and I'd still be left wondering. So I let it go, outwardly. But inside, I felt that same gnawing, sick curiosity again. So I waited. A few days later, when she left her phone unattended, I looked. And what I found made me realize the first lie wasn't an isolated thing, it was part of a pattern. They'd been talking for years. 6 years, to be exact. 6 years of secret messages on Messenger, with notifications turned off, so I'd never see them pop up. They weren't even Facebook friends, meaning she'd gone out of her way to keep him invisible. I scrolled through their messages. At first, nothing too alarming. Catching up, small talk, inside jokes. But then there were comments from him, telling her she looked beautiful, joking about how much he missed her, saying he wished she'd move back down to Florida, where he still lived. And the worst part? The tone. He wasn't some random guy trying to flirt, he knew her. He knew her well enough to make the jokes sound natural, familiar, easy. I saw a few messages that crossed the line, crude sexual jokes, hints at what they'd once done, what he missed. He even offered to pay off her student loans, which, for the record, I have been paying, working 60 hours a week while she stays home with our kid. That one hit like a punch to the gut. Not because of the money, but because of the intimacy it implied, the kind of conversation you only have with someone you feel close to, comfortable with. To her credit, and I mean that loosely, she didn't seem to flirt back too much. No full-on sexting, no photos, no overt reciprocation. But then, I found it. The message that made everything else blur out. She told him she loved him. It wasn't romantic or poetic. It wasn't, I'm in love with you. It was just, love you. Simple, casual, almost dismissive. But you know what? You don't just say that to someone like him. Not when you've hidden their name for 6 years. Not when you've turned off the notifications. Not when you've kept that conversation separate from the rest of your life. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. Because suddenly all the other things, the porn, the lies, the excuses, they weren't isolated incidents anymore. They were part of a larger truth I didn't want to face. My wife had built a version of herself that existed outside our marriage, one I wasn't allowed to see. Fast forward a few months, and I found myself slipping into a habit I hated. I kept checking her phone. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who snoops, who digs, who can't trust his own wife, but I couldn't stop. Every time she set it down, it felt like the truth was right there, buzzing under the screen, waiting for me to catch it before it disappeared. And what I kept finding broke me a little more each time. She was still messaging him. After everything, the lies, the tears, the promises, she was still talking to her ex. Only now, it wasn't just small talk. She was sharing photos and videos of our child with him. The same man who once joked about what he'd like to do to her, who called her beautiful and told her to move back to Florida. She was showing him our life. Our family. I remember staring at one of the messages, just a short video of our kid giggling in the kitchen, and feeling this deep, nauseating mix of anger and sadness. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was something more twisted. She was letting him into a space that was supposed to belong only to us. But what could I do? How was I supposed to bring this up without blowing up my marriage, without losing my kid? The thought of divorce terrified me, not because I couldn't handle being alone, but because I couldn't handle only seeing my child on weekends, or for a few hours at a time. I didn't want to become some visitor in my own kid's life, because my wife couldn't be honest. Then, in March, something happened that ripped the scab off everything. My buddy, one of my best friends, cheated on his wife. She found the text, the proof, the whole thing. It was ugly. When I told my wife about it, it was one of those moments where couples usually bond over shared outrage. I told her everything. How his wife found the messages, how it blew up, how their marriage was crumbling. She nodded along, asked questions, acted sympathetic. But later that same night, she left her phone out again. And I don't know what made me do it, maybe instinct, maybe paranoia, but I opened it. And everything between her and her ex was gone. 7 years of messages. Deleted. Gone like it never existed. My stomach sank. She'd wiped it clean right after I told her about my buddy's affair being exposed. The timing wasn't a coincidence, it was a reaction. She'd heard how his wife caught him and panicked. She knew I'd been suspicious before, and she cleaned house before I could ever have the same kind of proof. I remember standing in the kitchen holding her phone, feeling completely hollow. I couldn't even confront her this time. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I know you deleted messages I wasn't supposed to know existed in the first place? There was no winning that conversation. I had no evidence, no screenshots, just a gut full of dread and a mind full of memories that she could now deny ever happened. So I let it go, or at least I told myself I did. I waited. Watched. Hoped. Maybe she'd finally end it. Maybe she'd realize how wrong it was and tell him to leave her alone. But then came the night that broke whatever hope I had left. She told me she and our kid were spending the night at her grandmother's house. It wasn't unusual, she did that about once a week. Helped her out, kept her company, made sure she wasn't lonely. I didn't think much of it, but something about that night, it just felt off. Maybe it was the timing. Maybe it was just that sixth sense you get when you already know the truth. When I checked her phone later, I saw a new message from him. He'd asked if she could talk. She said yes. It was midnight. I didn't see the call log, but I didn't have to. I saw the messages right before and right after. They talked for almost an hour. And the only reason it ended, the only reason was because our kid woke up looking for her. Which means she wasn't just messaging him anymore. She was calling him. Not on Messenger. She'd be too smart for that after deleting everything. She'd either used another app or his actual number. And I knew if I didn't document it right then, it would disappear again. So I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the screen. My hands were shaking. Because this time I didn't just catch her lying. I caught her choosing him. Over me. Over our marriage. Over our family. Lately, I've noticed things getting worse. Or maybe I'm just finally seeing them for what they are. She's locked all her social media apps in a hidden folder that only opens with her Face ID. At first, I thought it was nothing. People have privacy, right? But it's hard not to connect the dots when you've spent years uncovering secrets one after another. She didn't used to care if I saw her notifications, didn't used to hide anything. Now, every time I walk by, she tilts her phone away from me like muscle memory. I can't check anymore. I'm completely in the dark. I don't know if she's still talking to him on Messenger, or if they've moved to Instagram, WhatsApp, or God knows what else. I don't know what they talk about, what she tells him, what she sends him. And that uncertainty, it's eating me alive. Part of me wants to just call her out, demand the truth. But another part of me knows that even if she swears up and down that nothing's going on, I won't believe her. She lied before, looked me in the eyes and denied things until I showed her proof. How do you trust someone who only tells the truth when cornered? And then there's the fear. The kind that makes you stay quiet. I've worked hard for everything we have, the house, the stability, the family. I can't stand the thought of losing half of it in a divorce, of watching her take our child to Florida, of some other man raising the kid I tuck in every night. I saw yesterday that he follows her on Instagram now. Maybe that's where they talk. Maybe that's why she's locking everything away. Every instinct in me is screaming to confront her, to get it out in the open. But what if that's the thing that finally breaks us for good? What if I push too hard and lose everything I'm trying so desperately to hold together? I honestly don't know what to do next. Part of me wants to confront her and finally demand the truth. No more lies or half answers. But the other part of me is terrified of what that truth might mean for me, for our marriage, for our kid. If I push her, it could lead to a separation or worse, a custody battle, and I can't stomach the thought of only seeing my child part-time. But living like this, checking over my shoulder, wondering who she's messaging, pretending not to notice when she hides her phone, is tearing me apart. I can't tell if I'm being paranoid or just seeing reality for what it is. Do I quietly gather proof before saying anything? Do I bring it up calmly and risk her gaslighting me again? Or do I just let it go for the sake of keeping our family intact? I need an outside perspective. Am I holding on to something already broken, or is there a way to salvage this without destroying my life?